Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have an awesome conversation for you today with filmmaker Guy Nattiv. His new movie, Golda, is in theaters nationwide right now and it also can be seen on Amazon Prime. We're going to get to chat with Guy in a couple of minutes, but first, thank you for tuning in today. We appreciate you listening and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media and we will read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. All right, let me tell you a little bit about Guy Nattiv. He is an Academy Award-winning filmmaker, originally from Israel. His first American short film, Skin, won the 2019 Academy Award for Best Live Action Short, and the feature version, also titled Skin, was released in 2019. His recent film, Golda, stars Academy Award-winning actress Helen Mirren as the first female Prime Minister of Israel, Golda Meir. His next feature film, TATAMI, premiered at the Venice Int Film Festival in September 2023 to much acclaim. He co-directed the film with Iranian filmmaker Zar Amir Ibrahimi, who won Best Actress at the Cannes Film Festival for her film Holy Spider. It is the first ever Israeli-Iranian cinematic collaboration. In Israel, Guy wrote and directed 3 features, including The Flood, Magic Men, and Strangers. Guy, welcome into the back room.
Thank you so much, Andy. Great to be here.
First off, congrats on Golda. I know it's in theaters nationwide right now and also launched on Amazon a couple days ago. And so we'll talk about that in a bit, but I just want to peel the onion back a little bit, go back in time to little Guy in Israel, what he was like. When did movies first get on your radar?
Well, in Israel in the 80s, there weren't a lot of platform like there were in the States, or school had an artistic platform for kids. So I basically, I didn't have that. And I was very frustrated as a kid because I did want to do some art and find my way. But there was only, it's kind of like it's a different time. The country was it's a young country, and art was not really part of what a kid would go through. I think it only until I was 16 and I went to high school is where I went to a special school named WITSO. WITSO is like the kind of organization around the world that give money to schools. And it was like one specific school in Tel Aviv that had like sculpturing and, drawing and stuff that are not connected to cinema, but it was art. And that changed my life, basically, this school. Because I was so bad in other things like chemistry and mathematics and stuff like that. I just hated it. And it was just, I failed in a lot of those classes. And when I came to this high school, this specific high school, and I took the bus for 2.5 hours because it was far away from my home. That's where I discovered myself. That's where I discovered my art. And that's basically saved me and really focused me on what I want to do. And now my dad took me to all those movies. I'm sure that you and I grew up on the same movies from the 70s and 80s. Mm-hmm. If you look at it, he took me to actually grown up movies like, I've seen The Untouchables, Brian De Palma, I've been like The Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. He took me to that. He took me to like movies that shaped my world, and I was shocked seeing them. And then, in the neighborhood, we had like those video cassettes that kids would take from the video shop, and they sneaked in, and we saw Taxi Driver that I was shocked by, because at the age of 8, I was like, what is this? So, watching all this like Raging Bull and The Conversation and Ellis Doesn't Live Here Anymore. I mean, these movies shaped my world, and I didn't grow up on superhero movies because there weren't any. The only film that was out there was Superman, the first Superman. And it was actually not a superhero movie. It was such an emotional and deep movie.
Right.
So, that's what I grew up on. And I'm sure you did too, on movies that have, studios were making movies with depth and and with a lot of topics that are essential and strong and powerful. Like I saw Network when I was like 16, and I was like, "What is this?" Also,
Movies with like family dramas, movies that had a cultural point and a message that, wanted
exactly,
to say something rather than just throw 150 or
yeah,
500 million at a
yeah,
budget and then make a
just
superhero film.
exactly. So and I grew up on Hal Hartley because Hal Hartley films came to Tel Aviv, and as a 16-year-old, I saw like, and I was overwhelmed by them and all the indie wave of New York cinema, that blew me away. So that's the me. And then after the army, I went to 3 years of the army. That was kind of a stop in everything you do. And after the army, I didn't go like every other Israeli to India or to Thailand or to do that kind of a trip. After the army, I went straight to film school. I didn't want to wait even a minute. And that's where I bloomed, in Tel Aviv. Yeah.
And then but then you landed in advertising.
So because I couldn't make money from cinema, obviously, in the beginning, and I started with short films. My dad is an advertiser, he had an advertising agency, and I started as a copywriter, writing for commercial, and I started writing, and then I became a creative supervisor, and then I started directing commercials, which was a segue to making films.
And when you made that transition around that time, you mentioned 70s movies, you mentioned Brian De Palma, obviously the movies you mentioned, I would say Scorsese is top on the list. Who were some of the inspirations for you around that time? Who did you look up to as a filmmaker?
Wow, so many. I think that a lot of European cinema came to Israel. So Jean de Florette, Jean de Florette was wow. I mean, Claude Berry, he was an amazing filmmaker, and Menon and Claude Sautet, the of course all Woody Allen films that I grew up on because my parents brought them, and but I also loved horror movies was not part of my childhood because we have enough horror in Israel, like with all the wars, and I think that people were not. But when I saw Michelangelo Antonioni, The Passenger from 1975, it was an amazing movie that shaped me. Or the French Connection, that was part of it, but it's a lot of like Kurosawa and another amazing director that shaped my Gates of Heaven. I mean, it's so many. I mean, Network was really like Faye Dunaway and Peter Finch. I mean, I'm going through the list, and it's just endless list. The Deer Hunter. I mean,
my favorite.
Coming Home. Harold and Maude. Hal Ashby was
Harold and
like
Maude
the best.
is the best.
Right?
Have you ever seen Where's Papa?
No.
Oh my God,
What's that?
I'm gonna change your world. It's also Ruth Gordon. Ruth Gordon was in Harold and Maude. Where's Papa is with Ruth Gordon and George Segal. George Segal plays a single Jewish guy living in, I don't know, Upper West Side, I think, and his mom is Ruth Gordon, and it's all about their relationship and his dating. It is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. And he has
Carl Reiner directed it. Wow.
Yeah. There's a line.
Carl Reiner.
There's a line. I won't say what it is because I don't want to spoil it. A line that George Segal says to Ruth Gordon that to this day remains, in my opinion, the funniest line I've ever heard in a movie. So you have to check that out. I want to ask you about Woody Allen. And I ask as a New York Jew, when those movies played in Israel back then, the New York of Woody Allen's essence, right? The Upper West Side, the shtick. Like, the Israelis look at New York and go, that's a fucking crazy place. Because his New York is so different than, I guess, anyone else's New York, but it's so different than what I would imagine Israelis who have never been to New York must imagine. Like, it's just a bunch of neurotic Jews.
Well, don't forget that I'm an Ashkenazi Jew like you,
Hmm.
and we are both coming from the same shtetl. We both probably. Are you Polish?
No, I'm
Po-
Russian and Austrian
Okay, but it's
and
the
German
same.
and
It's the
German
same.
and
And
German.
German, and
Hmm.
German. Um, we are all neurotic Jews,
That is true. True
know
that.
that,
True that.
and
That's
yeah,
Hebrew, by the way.
yeah. And seeing Woody Allen neuroticism,
Uh,
or an erotic approach and the jokes, we totally get it because it's us. It's
Interesting.
yeah all the Ashkenazi Jews coming from Eastern Europe to Israel. I mean, we got it. We got it, and it was funny for us, and we all understood. Like when you saw his mother as coming in the sky. It was New York Stories, I think, that
Hmm.
in the talking to him and said, "What are you doing?" And he's looking, "Oh, what do you want from me?" And that's everyone's mom.
Hmm.
So I think that it totally spoke to us, and we got it. And I was just amazed by his cinema. And it started from take the money and run.
Hmm.
From that point. But it definitely influenced me in every. Yeah, but yeah, there's so many amazing movies from the 70s and 80s, and also we can be a lot of very cynical towards ET, but ET changed my life because you're right, it's about family,
Hmm.
it's about family, it's about divorce, it's about a lot of other things. Yeah,
It's a love story, and
well, it's a love story. Yeah, it is.
One last question on Woody Allen, which sort of speaks to a bigger macro issue, which is separating the man from the artist, right? You can ask this question about Woody Allen. You can ask it about Michael Jackson. You can ask it about
Roman Polanski.
Roman Polanski. Exactly. I have sort of flipped over the years. I remember there was a point where I just said, I can't watch any more Woody Allen films. I can't listen to any more Michael Jackson. I'll do Jackson 5, but I can't do Michael Jackson.
Right,
Roman
right.
Polanski is like a whole other thing, too. And then I kind of had this thing like I was like, all right, Picasso, he was a fucking weirdo. Like he was a sexist, a misogynist. I mean, everybody's got
Charlie
issues.
Chaplin.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got a bad side to them.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to go through my life choosing my artists and who I listen to and watch and read based on who they are in their personal lives, I might not have anything left to look at. I'm curious to know what your view on that is as an artist.
I feel the same as you in a way. It's funny. We just came back from Venice Film Festival with our movie, and there was a Polanski movie there, his new movie,
Hmm.
and a Woody Allen film, a new Woody Allen film. And Roman Polanski had this crazy comedy that he just directed, and they premiered it, and the festival got a lot of shit for that.
Hmm.
And we wanted to go, and we said to ourselves, maybe not. It's weird. I mean, should I go to this film? Should I not? I mean, but you're right. There's no one answer to it,
Right.
because from one hand, we grew up on his films, and Roman Polanski did an amazing, few of his films are masterpieces, um, including The Pianist. And but it's hard now to go to watch those films clean, right?
Right.
Um, but then again, these movies, like those giant movies that we grew up on, there's a place in my heart for them. So it's a fight, it's just there's no one answer to it.
Yeah, it is a complicated question and it's a complicated decision that one makes. I came to a place where it's like, you know what, who knows what Mick Jagger's done? Who knows what any of these people do? Eric Clapton now is an anti-vaxxer. Am I going to stop listening to Layla? It's like,
No,
where do you
no,
draw the line
no.
with this stuff? So it's like,
Yeah.
you know what?
Look, I had the same situation now with Golda. Now, Golda was the pioneer. Um, she's not a filmmaker, obviously, but she was a pioneer for women. She paved the way to Angela Merkel and Thatcher, the
Mhm.
whole thing. But she got a lot of, she's a controversial character.
Right.
She didn't murder anyone, but she completely ignored the Palestinian issue. She hated the Sephardic Jews, and a lot of people blame her for the debacle of the Yom Kippur War.
Mhm.
So when I dealt with her character, Helen Mirren and I sat here in my house and spoke about it. What are we getting into? You know, what are we getting? Are we, from one hand, she's, you know, a woman degraded by a misogynist man in Israel in the 70s. And that's why her stories need to be told. But then she has a lot of faults. She's a flawed character. So it's always a challenge when you making a biopic about someone to tell the entire character, and not to get you know, but to get fire from other people. It's just very intense right now that everything is so extreme. You know, people are so extreme from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I hate using this term cancel culture, but it's what you're speaking to. It's like, it's a very tricky landscape, and people can see their lives go upside down overnight because of a choice they've made in terms of what they do or what they say. But to your point earlier, what you were just saying, we're all flawed in some way, right? It's just a matter of to what degree. So the idea that we insulate ourselves in life from people who are flawed is just, it's not realistic. And when you take that into art, well, how do you exclude people who are flawed from music, from television, from movies, from books? It's impossible.
Look, in Skin, the short in Skin, the feature, I took a protagonist as a neo-Nazi and who wanted to do the change. And I brought him as a, you know, and that's insane now to do that, because, you know, I was kind of naive like 4 years ago to do that, because yeah, let's make a movie about the neo-Nazi who's changing his life.
The nice Nazi.
The nice Nazi, yeah.
Well, Trump said it. I mean, Trump said there are nice Nazis, right? I mean,
yeah, nice
both
Nazi,
sides,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But
then when you look at in films from the 70s, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you know, and you know, it's just, there's so many bold decisions and bold films about flawed characters. You know, a woman under the influence. You know, that's what gave me the inspiration to go and tackle this, because I think the flawed characters are the most interesting characters on films. Look at the Joker, you know, I mean, it's, and I know it brings a lot of fire, but for me, it's very, very interesting in terms of cinema making.
Well, you're 100% correct. And, you know, it's all about the execution, right? Like anything else in life, it's all in the execution. I mean, my late wife, Adrian, made a film about a woman who cheats on her husband with her gynecologist while she's pregnant. And it became this beloved film that grandmas and granddaughters go to see together. Like,
by the way, Andy, it's now a hit in Israel in the theater.
Really?
Waitress. It's a giant hit.
Wow,
yeah.
That's crazy. That little story has so much life to it. It's unbelievable. They made it into a musical, which was a 4-year record-shattering production. And I'm working on with the studio on a televised version of it, a scripted series. So,
oh my God, that's so cool.
This story
so cool.
has such life ahead of it.
Blasted.
But to your point, I think we're in a culture today where things that we don't know or we don't like or make us uncomfortable, it's worse than ever in terms of the canceling of that. We talk about movies from the 70s. What about TV shows from the 70s? All in the Family. Billy Crystal.
All in the Family.
I love All in the Family. But you can't do any of that today. 50 years later, we're not able to do what we did 50 years ago creatively because the boundaries are now so siloed.
Yeah, it's so narrow. Yeah. Do you think that a movie like Dog Day Afternoon would have been done today?
No. I love 70s films. I'm totally with you. Every film you mention, I've seen 100 times. And I'll watch those films and like you hear words being thrown around like the N-word or a gay slur. Like you can't say, but then it's like the authenticity. Try to make a clean Goodfellas, a politically correct Goodfellas.
Oh my God.
Impossible, right?
It's impossible.
But it's like, impossible. It's not fair that it can't be made because it's art. It's art. I mean, Picasso gave a woman three eyes, right? Why is that okay?
Yeah.
That's his interpretation. He didn't give a shit whether it was political.
Yeah.
He was expressing himself as an artist. You have a choice as a viewer, as a listener, as a reader, not to participate. But when artists, but we see it in this country today with book bannings in Florida. We're living in very strange times.
But then you have filmmakers like the Safdie brothers, and like, have you seen Hereditary?
No.
It's Ari Aster, Ari Aster, who did The Boys Afraid and Midsommar, and these filmmakers are so bold and they're so like, they remind me of the 70s wave,
Right.
of they just going in there without giving a damn and just making their own cinema, which I adore.
Yeah, it can be done. I think it's all about the execution. You mentioned Skin. The short was unbelievable. It was so powerful. I was sitting on the edge of my seat watching it. The full-length feature film was great. I love, it's a true story, right? It's based on real events. I mean, neo-Nazis.
Brian Weider.
There's a movement to convert neo-Nazis, these skinheads, into real humans. So I want to ask you, that is such a departure in terms of theme and subject matter from your earlier work, like, where like a 13-year-old kid's coming of age in his bar mitzvah. Like, how did you get to American skinheads? And so authentically. I mean, I was terrified watching this stuff, and because I know it's real. How did you get there?
So I was sitting in a coffee shop in Tel Aviv. I was dating my wife back then, girlfriend, and I knew that I'm about to move to the States. We were about to get married and the whole thing. And I was sitting in a coffee shop in Tel Aviv, and suddenly I see this article in the newspaper. When you see all those kind of transformation, the face of Brian Weider transformed from fully tattooed to clean face, and the neo-Nazi that changed his way and became an FBI informant. And I'm reading the article and I'm like, holy shit, if my first American movie, I mean, this is my first American movie. And I called my wife and I sent her the article, and she said, you know what, we're meeting them. We are driving to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we're going to meet them right now. You're going to come. I'm going to come she was in Canada. I came from Israel. We landed in New Mexico and we drove we slept in some motel, and we met with them, and we had an amazing meeting with Brian Weider and his wife, Julie. We had an amazing weekend. I'm the first Jew he met. He's the first neo-Nazi I met, and we sat and we spoke about everything. And he said, look, it's all about my childhood. It's all about my childhood. It's all about my father and the drugs and the this and that. And I spoke to him about my grandfather and about his Holocaust experience and, my family. And she started crying, and at the end of this weekend, I felt like I'm talking to a human being. He used to be a monster, and that's what sent me to write my first American movie. And back then, Hillary was supposed to be, was about to be president, and neo-Nazis were not even a thing, and when we sent it to a lot of producers told us that, it's not really a thing in the States. There's not real neo-Nazis, and, it's like maybe you people here and there, but we don't want to invest money in this movie. And I was really depressed because all my friends in Tel Aviv, they continue making movies, and here I am in the States, not be able to launch my first film, the first script that I wrote. And so Jamie, my wife, told me that, you did shorts before. Let's make a short that will ignite the feature. And that's where Shalom Maimon, who is my buddy from film school, came to me with the idea of scanning the short. I told him, okay, let's collaborate in that. We wrote the story in it's also based on a true story, but we wrote it on a weekend. My wife and I put all our money on this short. We shot it in our backyard, and we brought some amazing cast members, and we just shot it and edited it and sent it. Now everything shifted because Trump became president.
Mm-hmm.
The whole, there's two sides, the famous monologue,
Good Nazis.
speech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good Nazis, bad Nazis. That became like a thing. And the horrible what happened in
Charlottesville.
with Charlottesville happened.
Mm-hmm.
So suddenly everything shifted, and we sent the film. Now we sent the script to the producers with the short, and now the reaction was completely different. So Sting and his wife, Trudy Styler, saw the short, read the script, said we're in. Oren Moverman, who's a good friend, he was there from the get-go.
Celine.
And he said, I'm in.
Celine Ray
Celine Ray from Avon, who was still our champion and still are in every movie we make. She's like a producer in it. And then we found ourselves in upstate New York with Jamie Bell, with, an amazing cast with Vera Farmiga, shooting this film while the short is starting to hit the film festival. So that's how everything started. And the short and the features, they each had their own kind of a way out and started to hit the road. And that's how it all started. And I really felt that I'm doing the cinema that I want to do.
And
which
so
is like
your wife, Jamie, who is a kind of a triple threat in her own right, actor, producer, director, who I got to know because she contacted me years ago and wanted to help with the Adrian Shelley Foundation. And so I remember watching you guys on stage when you won the Oscar, and I was thinking, what must be going through your heads in that moment? Because, winning an Oscar for anything, ever. I mean, there's a list of people that we've all known for 50 years who never won an Oscar. Was that something that was ever even remotely on your radar when you first set out on that journey to make that film?
Absolutely not. And that's why, for the whole process, and here, Jamie, we speak about you.
Yeah.
Candy, can you answer the question?
Yeah, so I was wondering what went through your heads when you were standing there holding Mr. Oscar or Mrs. Oscar.
It definitely has a penis. I mean, you're in a love thing.
I wouldn't know. I never looked for those. I never checked the statue genitalia. That's just not my thing. But what was going through your minds when you won an Oscar for this short film?
We didn't think we were going to win. We weren't the favorite. So we came and we thought to ourselves, okay, listen, this is
To be here is so crazy.
Just to be here. And
it's what makes our business so amazing, also horrible oftentimes. But, we rub pennies together, and, Guy and his co-writer came up with this idea, and we were like, we are going to make this thing no matter what. And just got our friends who believed in this story. And to think that, like, people, it just got into a film festival in Cambodia 5 years later.
That's crazy.
So that's the amazing thing about it, is the reach. When you get a platform like that, it just has tremendous reach.
Must be a big hit among all the Pol Pot fans.
Yeah, exactly. Pol Pot.
So let's talk about Golda. It focuses on the 1973 Yom Kippur War that lasted 19 days. I think the film kind of centers on around 10 days of that. But why was it important to tell this story and tell it now after 50 years?
When I arrived to the project, it was not my initiative. It was not my, it was kind of like an open assignment for directors in Amazon. And Ted Hope was leading this, he was a champion of this project. So when I got to read the script for the first time, it was a massive war film, like $120 million, like almost like 1917 kind of a movie with 80% war, 20% Golda. She wasn't even the main thing. It was like a war movie. And I came and I said, you guys, this is insane. Why are we not focusing on the woman? Why are we doing this massive? Let's just switch the wait here to do more of Golda. And he said, fine, why don't you give us your pitch of what you want to do? And I came and I pitched it, and they said amazing, and everything was good. And boom, the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened and Ted Hope left Amazon, the project got basically cut off, and we didn't know what to do. And from $100 million movie, it suddenly became 13 because Helen Mirren was already attached, and she told us, okay, use my name to bring money, and let's try to understand. And they asked me, okay, now when it's $13 million, when it's $12 million, what do you think? How should we do that? And I said, I think that I want to go more of the conversation with Coppola conversation. I want to go into this woman's mind, under her skin, bring the war into the room rather than going outside and try to shoot the war, which means let's focus on the voices and the sound. And, I'm a big fan of Blowout with Travolta, the fact that he's like recording this murder and this whole sound element that is another narrative in the movie. And they liked the idea, and we did a shift with the script. And from that point, Embankment from the UK and Bleecker Street got into the project and invested their money. And we found ourselves in the middle of the pandemic in the UK shooting this movie about an older woman, a sick older woman who suffered from cancer, that her suffering, her physical and mental suffering, is basically what the country is going through. Surrounded with hubris, misogynist commanders that got a giant slap after they thought them the king of the Middle East, and now they are basically on the verge of losing their country. And so that was the approach.
And the interaction with the United States and Henry Kissinger in particular, who was the Secretary of State at the time, that's also a central theme in the film.
Now you have to understand, Golda Meir was beloved in the States by all the aunties, the Jewish aunties, but she's so hated in Israel because it was very easy to blame this older woman. So she's almost like the pariah of Israel. There's no square, school, road, street under her name, after her name.
Interesting.
And that's how people were ashamed of her. Now, my goal was not only to clear her name and to bring her because the Golda that we grew up on is like an older woman on a 50 shekel bill. And what I wanted people to know and have is there is the human Golda. And I thought that going into those 10 days in the war, it's almost like a requiem for a leader, requiem for this lady who died together with the country. And that was my goal, to bring a more human Golda, a more three-dimensional Golda to people who grew up on basically a myth.
What did you base that on? How did you get to know the Golda that the rest of the world perhaps might not have seen so much? Was it told to you through family members, colleagues, books that you read about her, all the above?
Okay, so Nicholas Martin, who wrote the script, I didn't write the script. He met with a lot of generals, a lot of people that knew Golda back then. But what really gave him the information to write the script is the 10 years ago, there was a release from top secret documents from the war and from the war rooms and from the Agrarist Committee that investigated them. It came out, and all the secrets and all the debacle and all the, the defaults and all the secrets and lies came out, and he used that as the DNA for the movie. And all the sound bites that you hear in the war room are real sound bites that we got from one of the soldiers that recorded them during the war. So we had a lot of information, archival stuff. Yeah, for sure.
And I want to ask you a question that sort of touches on controversy, not just with your film in particular on a smaller scale, but in general. There's a movement today in the acting profession that actors, films about certain types of people, certain ethnicities, things like that, that they should be accurately portrayed by those who are in that religion or race or gender. So, for example, with your film, Helen Mirren, she actually came to you early on and said, "Are you sure you want me? Because I'm not Jewish." And that sort of speaks to this issue today, which I think is exacerbated mostly by Bradley Cooper and the whole Jew face controversy with him wearing a prosthetic nose and playing composer Leonard Bernstein. It's such a fascinating conversation. I have a very strong opinion, but I'm curious to know like how you navigated through that, and what is your thinking, not just as it relates to Golda, but just in general about actors portraying people who they're not.
Isn't that called acting?
Well, that's my
Actors
answer.
portraying people who...
Yeah, that's my answer. You know, like it's.
I mean, you just answer it.
Yeah, isn't it like a duh? Like, why are we at this place today? And look, I've had the argument with people about the business side, like cast contingencies and all that. Like, put that aside, even though that's a reality. Okay, it's acting. Well, but why do you think it's such a thing? Why is it just because of what we were talking about before? The landscape we're in?
I'm going to quote Helen, who answered it beautifully. The whole question about, casting and the right casting and under president, the people who didn't get a chance to be there on the big screen or the small screen is very important, because when you look at, let's say a movie like Coda, who the cast was basically with people that had were disabled or were hearing disabled, impaired. Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing to see that, because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they would probably cast Tom Hanks and Michelle Pfeiffer to play those roles, right? And then if you look at A Scent of a Woman, they will probably probably cast someone who's really blind, who's a blind actor. And that will probably make it more authentic. And so there is a meaningful discussion about that, because I think that even Dallas Buyers Club, what Jared Leto is playing, they will probably cast someone who's more right for it, and that's fine, and that's good. That's a good shift. But when it's coming to Judaism, I think it's a different case for me as a Jewish Israeli person. If you start saying that only Jews can portray Jews, then what? Tomorrow there's a role of a Protestant or of a Catholic. That means that Jewish actor cannot portray a Catholic person because he's not Catholic. And then, it started to be really dangerous in a way. And I'm all for open your mind and heart and everything like that. But I really think that when I met Helen and she told me about her days in the kibbutz when she was 29, touring the country, touring Israel for 4 months, knowing the Israeli people and what it means to be Israeli, knowing what it means to be, Golda.
She's Jewish.
Exactly. And I felt I'm speaking to my mom. I feel that it's like you're speaking to somebody who is your family member. Right. I felt it. And she came into this role knowing that she would get shit for it, but she was so right for it. And I'm not the first person who said that she's the right person for it. It's actually Gideon Meir, the grandson of Golda Meir, who said, before even I got to the project, it said, "I see my Baba, I see my grandma in Helen. Please cast her." Okay, so it's a good discussion to have. In this case, I felt that Helen is the right person to be Golda.
Yeah, well, like you said, it should be whoever you feel as a director is going to do the job the way you need it to be conveyed. And it's acting. I mean, it gets back to the first thing you answered with. It's acting. Actors, by the virtue of what they do, they become people they're not.
And I also don't think Jewish people have any problem in casting in the States. I don't think there's like, oh my God, no one casts Jew to play. It doesn't. You see so many Jews portraying non-Jews and Jews
Right.
in Hollywood and in the world. I mean, look at
Yeah.
Shira Haas, look at Gal Gadot, look at even isn't Harrison Ford Jewish? I mean, it's just you have
That might be a little wishful thinking.
yeah.
You're reminding me. Maybe he's a quarter Jewish. Jen is telling me he's a quarter Jewish. But when I was growing up, my parents, I don't know, I always wonder if people's parents played the same game that my parents did, which was he's Jewish. Like my father thought everybody was Jewish. We'd watch a boxing match and he'd look at me and go, Muhammad Ali, he's Jewish. And I'd be like, Dad, he's not Jewish. Muhammad Ali is not Jewish. Okay. The Pope is not Jewish. So let me ask you a question about Golda Meir, because as an American, I sit here in 2023. We still don't have a woman president. 50 fucking years ago, Israel had a female prime minister. India, New Zealand. I mean, there are countries Germany, Angela Merkel, England,
Germany.
For decades. What is wrong with America?
You're really asking me, the Israeli guy?
Yes. Well, you're Israeli American, so you got.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot wrong with America, and I think that we are. I just read the polls yesterday that give Trump a big
9 points.
Yeah, 9 points. I mean,
an outlier.
It's so depressing. It's so depressing. I mean, there's a lot of wrong with America. I think there's a half, that is sane and trying to maintain, and half that is not.
But when you look at just the issue of leadership, we
leadership,
are this beacon of democracy all over the world, and we can't have a woman president. It's just a crazy thing. So now I want to ask you about your country, okay? Because your country's a little bit on the hot seat these days.
A little bit?
Yeah, I believe you're a little. I believe you're a little bit outspoken.
It's a lot.
You're a little outspoken politically.
I'm very outspoken.
You're not a fan of the occupation. You are like a lot of Israelis.
Of course.
What do you think is happening in not so much like what is on the ground today, but when you try to play out where is this going, it's kind of a scary look into the future.
Very scary look. But I think if you look at it, if you take like a top shot of the world right now, there's a right-wing, extreme right-wing wave that is basically washing us. Look at Italy, look at Hungary, look at Poland, look at Turkey, look at like all those countries that used to look at Argentina right now. Look at that. Like the right extreme leaders are taking over a lot of those countries. And that's what exactly happening in Israel right now. I think that Benjamin Netanyahu, who used to be more moderate, by the way, he used to be more kind of a middle guy. Still, he's not my taste, never was. But now seeing him controlled by those extremists and by this right wing, it's very upsetting. I went with a lot of my friends and veterans from the war, from Yom Kippur War, and my father. I went to demonstrate against this horrible government in Israel. And you know what? It gave me, on one hand, the country is in deep shit right now. Deep shit. It's like the judicial system and the whole women's right and the whole stuff. It's just very, very troubling. Seeing it from outside, it's really troubling and mind-blowing. But to see the half sane side of people care, walking up, going to the streets and demonstrate and be among thousands, give you a lot of hope that people still care. And I miss that in the States, by the way. I miss the demonstrations in the States of the sane people of the left wing. Let's demonstrate. Let's go and demonstrate for women's rights. And let's do that in like what happened in after Black Lives Matter. I went with my wife and kids to protest, and it was great. I need to see that from the left side, from us, to see that we really care.
Here.
Because otherwise we'll find here.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise we'll find ourselves with Trump again in 1 year, and that will be the end of it.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of parallels between the United States and Israel, not just in their leadership. I mean, when you compare Trump and Netanyahu.
Yeah.
But just where the country is in terms of the divisiveness. Half of the country in Israel you talk about is sane. Half of the country here is sane, and the other half is, varying
Insane.
degrees of insane.
Yeah.
So you look at, the rise of right-wing extremism, which, is getting back to skin, like it is part of your work.
Yes.
And so professionally and personally, this is obviously a subject that's important to you. Anti-Semitism, you look at that on the rise. You're a grandson of Holocaust survivors. The expression "never again." I'm sure, like me, there was a point in your life where you were like, "Yeah, never again," and then all of a sudden, a few years ago, you were like, "I'm not so sure about that. I'm not ready to say never again anymore." And you start thinking about, like, Germany. There was no genocide in the late 20s or the early 30s. It was just the beginnings. And you see
the beginning of it.
And then you see people scaling the Capitol walls, and you see the rhetoric, and you see the dudes with their Nazi and the guns, and you're like, what the fuck? Never again? No way. And so being an Israeli who's come here and living here now, is there a part of you that misses being back? Because I think about that all the time. With all the shit that's out there in Israel, I wouldn't mind actually living in a place where most people are like me, my people. So I have like the opposite pole. Like I'm thinking of like, maybe someday I'm going to, so I wonder if you're living here now wishing like, as bad as it is over there, it's still like, it's a Jewish state.
Yeah, but it's a Jewish state that hates each other. like Jews hate Jews. You see, like 2 days ago, there was people went into Tel Aviv to pray in the Yom Kippur War, and that's fine, but they separated women and men, and that's something that is not right.
Right.
And they did it intentionally to provoke the Tel Avivians, and to start fighting between Tel Avivians towards the Hasidic Jews or the religious Jews, and there was a big fight between the two, and you can see it started to be like a civil war in Israel. But when you talk about Holocaust and you talk about those, like, look at Putin, look at what Putin is doing to Ukraine.
Right.
This is Holocaust.
Sure.
This is like a crazy leader, that lost his mind. And tomorrow there could be like a Third World War with this guy. No. So, the Golda is opened in Russia and in the cinemas in Russia. It was sold to Russia before the war started, before the invasion. I was against that, but I couldn't, there's nothing I could do to prevent it. One day after the screening, a journalist calls me and tells me, listen, your film caused a lot of debacle in Russia. And I said, why? Because the way Golda is talking to Kissinger about the Russians is insulting to them. So right now they're speaking about censoring the movie or not showing it at all. They're showing it to the Putin guys, and he's gonna decide if it's gonna show it or not because of this one scene that she's speaking to. This guy is crazy, and the world is crazy right now, and we have to really, worry about that. Yeah, so you're right. It's never again. It's not something I can rely on.
Yeah. In our last couple of
Ever
minutes,
again.
I want to ask you about what's next for you. I know you have a movie, TATAMI, that I want to ask you to talk about for a minute. But do you see yourself building off of skin and the themes that are culturally important, or what we're talking about today, Israeli-Palestinian relations, global conflict? Is that going to be infused in more of your work going forward, or could you put out a movie next year about a girl who's navigating her bat mitzvah? You know what I mean? Like, where do you have a vision for going forward with global issues that are personal and important to you on the subjects that we're talking about? Or is that just maybe part of what you may be doing?
I met Oliver Stone in Jerusalem Film Festival. He came he got a Life Achievement Award, and we spoke. We had a kind of a dinner, all of us, and we spoke. And he's one of my heroes, like in terms of the movies he's making. And he did, which you could see a lot of them are political, but sometimes you have The Doors,
Right.
and then you have like jams like U-Turn or stuff that are like, wow, he's also veering into those like relationship dramas and other stuff. My next film, Tatami, is already shot, and it's about like an Iranian judoka who's fighting for her freedom, basically. And I did that with Iranian filmmaker named Zar Ibrahimi, who won Cannes 2 years ago, and it was amazing to collaborate with Iranian artists. And my wife produced it as well, and it was amazing. But my next movie is called Harmonia, which is about my grandmother, who, at the age of 55, had post-depression from the Holocaust, and she wanted to kill herself until her manicurist told her that there is a woman who's a belly dancer, who's gorgeous, like Sophia Loren-like. She will change your life, and she will make you happy. And my grandmother met with her. It was in the 80s, and she changed her life. They danced, they fast, they did stuff that today is like mainstream, but in the 80s it looked like weird a little bit. And she made her happy. And suddenly my grandmother was spending more time with her and fell in love with her and left my grandfather and left our family and gave her all the reparation money from Germany. And what we didn't know is that this woman is actually a cult leader named Harmonia, and her name is Lord. And she had these 35 women around her. And when the police started investigating and the families were like, what the fuck is going on? She took all the women and brought them to Virginia in the middle of nowhere in a place called Yogaville in Buckingham County. And they lived like, she lived like a queen. She bought a plantation, and my grandmother was her right hand. And cuts to 2 years later, my mom and my aunt are flying to Virginia to bring back their mom home and just try and do that. And that's my next movie.
God, is this a doc or a narrative?
No, it's a narrative based on real life.
That's amazing.
Based on what happened to my grandmother. So it's not political. It's a family drama. It's about mothers and daughters and about what happened when your mother tell you sometimes, or one day, leave me, just let me go. I want my own life. I want my own freedom. And you're like, no, Mom, you're my mom. You need to be with me for my entire life. And it's about what is family, what is pursuit of happiness. And that's my next one. So answering your question about like,
that sounds utterly fascinating. So
yes.
Good luck with that. Definitely have to come back and talk to us about.
I will do.
Because that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, it's a whole other story. Yeah.
Guy, this has really been a fascinating conversation.
Andy, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on. And would love you to come back. So take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.